All right, let me turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. And Tom and Rick, you've seen this before because I'm using Neil's slides, but you can pipe in if I forget anything or misrepresent. So I'm really glad that I got the opportunity when Debbie asked me if I was willing to come back. I was here just a few weeks ago, actually. But this is something that kind of popped up new on our plate. And thank you, Doc, for putting all that background information in the chat. You might want to repeat that because people who joined later won't see it otherwise. But I will also...
Just before you get going, yeah, those were courtesy of Cindy Bates. I think I don't know whether she had heard you speak or what, but she had become aware of this issue probably through you and then had done some research and found those links. And
yeah.
So yes, in the chat are links to 4 different articles, I believe, with some background.
Yeah. I gave a talk at Framingham Library last week, focus on transportation issues much broadly, and I ended up with this. But anyway, so I wanted to start by just reminding us how much of a social justice issue this is, because every study repeatedly shows that rich Americans are the main contributors to climate change. And that includes even compared to rich people elsewhere, right? Rich Americans are much more high carbon users than any other rich people in the world. And here in the United States, we have, so the top, 1 second, I have to change something here so that I can see my slides. The top 10% of emitters are responsible for nearly half of all CO2, while the bottom 50% produce just 12%. So that's why climate change is fundamentally an issue of justice, right? And not only that, per capita emissions have actually decreased for poorer people in rich countries, but they have increased substantially among the world's richest 1%. So it's getting worse. And so the economic inequality really fuels this crisis and makes it harder to address it. This is not my conclusion, it comes from higher up. It's hard to see, therefore, how we can accelerate efforts to tackle climate change without more redistribution of income and wealth. And not only that, I think we need to really call out the injustices involved. And that brings me straight to this expansion at Hanscom. So this is a planned development that is going through the MIPA process as we speak. And this involves Massport, which has leased a big partial part of this land to a newly formed LLC. And there's also a portion that belongs to the Navy. And some of the land has been swapped, and that's proposed land swap has been approved. And this is a major climate injustice because it will add, and not just climate, I mean, it's also an environmental injustice, but it would add about 500 square feet of hangar space for 27 private jet hangars on 49 acres.
Wow. So
81 additional jets potentially. It would basically triple the private jet capacity at Hanscom. And it would also reconfigure a taxiway to support larger, heavier private jets. So that would, of course, also be pushing out more carbon. 35 environmental justice populations within a 5-mile radius would be impacted by that additional private jet travel. And there would be a 36.75 acres of new impervious area, so basically plastered. That's total would be 70 football fields, and 20 acres of mature trees would be cut down. Mature trees, of course, being the most logical carbon sinks, right, to protect us from warming. It's actually the single most the biggest development in Hanscom's history, and the environmental impacts are easy to compare. So you have private jets, 2.5 hour flight of a private jet emits roughly 20 tons of CO2. Okay, so the current yearly operations result in 752,000 tons. And if it gets tripled, it would be about 1,100,000. Someone just recalculated this. They keep making adjustments to these numbers. So over 1 million tons. Now, when you compare that, a gas-powered car emits about 5 tons per year. We're talking 2.5 hours, 20 tons, so 4 times that much. And if you have a nice solar array, you know, that offsets maybe 2 tons a year in Massachusetts, because, you know, it's Massachusetts. And then they compared the total solar PV in Concord, which offsets 4,100 tons per year. So if you look at the comparison of what we've been trying to do to offset carbon emissions and what they're doing, you see the injustice staring at your face, right? So what we are actually supposed to be doing, and our towns are actively working on reducing carbon with our climate action plans, is reducing about 4,000 tons a year. That would be completely dwarfed by this expansion. Carrie, you had a question?
I wonder, Sabine, before you move on, is it possible to go back to the previous screen that had all the bullet points populated there? I was taking, yeah, that one. Let me just take a picture of that.
Yeah, I can also share the slides with you after.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Yeah, even better. Thank you.
Yeah, so so basically this would cancel out 70% of the benefit of all solar PV ever installed in Massachusetts, right? So it's really a giant step backwards, because we haven't done enough yet, but also because this is just the worst thing to do at a time of climate emergency. So it's equal to removing 240,000 fossil fuel cars. I mean, you would have to remove 240,000 fossil fuel cars from the road, or install 3,000 megawatts of solar, or reduce the global population by about 243,000 average users, right? It just doesn't make sense.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Where is Senator Markey on this?
So we're actually working on getting all the legislators better informed and getting them to weigh in on this. There is a group of people now. We met on Saturday, and there's a group of people that has been tasked with focusing on the federal level, because there are federal aspects to this, because the approval, some of the approvals need to come from the federal agencies. So there are many different ways in which we're going to try to tackle this, but that is definitely one element. I don't believe he has weighed in yet, but I honestly am not entirely sure whether anyone has spoken to him, but that is in the works. We're just mounting a major campaign to stop this, because they were very clandestine about this. This only came out through the MIPA process in January. So it's been really, it's been really in the dark, which is why, while we're talking everywhere we can now, because people don't know about this. So the organizations behind this, so the LLC and Massport, they say, oh no, it won't affect flight volume. They argue that total operations have never changed with hangar capacity, which of course is total nonsense, because it basically defies logic. Why would you do it then if it doesn't really have any effect? And they actually even suggest that it might decrease because there would be fewer ferry flights between Logan and other airport. I mean, it just they're lying basically, and they're giving us false information, and they're trying their darndest to make people believe that this won't be a climate catastrophe.
Do you know if, I mean, to my mind, and I am only recently hearing about this, so I really appreciate you being here, but to my mind, one of the drivers of this has got to be, oh, if I don't have a place to put my airplane, maybe I can't buy it.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the manufacturers
Mhm.
must be
Yeah.
super in favor of this. I'm wondering if you've been come across evidence that that may be the case, that they're behind some of this push.
Well, what we've so far found is that this is not a Massachusetts or New England problem. This is a worldwide issue. This is happening all around the world. And if you peel your eyes to it, there's going to be more and more media reports about private jet expansions everywhere. The pandemic was a huge boost for private jet expansion, and because the rich people wanted to keep flying, and with private jets they could, because there was still commercial flight. So it's been a boom for the industry, and I'm sure that they are partly behind it. But I think for us at this point, we're just starting to get the word out, and we need people to join us. So I'm hoping everyone here will be willing to join us, because we need people to do more research. We need people to get the word out and so on. So in 22, total operations fell slightly overall, but private jet operations grew 10%. So, which was the second highest increase ever recorded. And so actually hangar capacity is our conclusion, will drive private jet flights, and suggests that flight volume is limited by hangar capacity. And that's because the largest increase in jet operations occurred in 2017 after the signature hangar project. So the last time increase was noticeable was precisely after hangars were added. So the drivers of this volume are capacity. Yes, more and more people want to fly privately, and they can't park their jets. There's actually also financial incentives, because there's no sales tax on private jet travel.
Wow.
There's of course no carbon price, which should be there all along. There's no real estate tax on the facilities. And there's tons of federal tax incentives and write-offs. So people are actually basically flying on our dollar, right? If you fly commercial, you have to pay all sorts of taxes in your airfare. And they don't. And we're basically all supporting this. So it's private luxury on the backs of the public, which adds to the injustice that I started with, right? So not only do they already pump more carbon into the air, which we all suffer from, but they're actually making us pay for it, which is really, I mean, you want to start the French revolutions. It's very convenient, they want their private jets parked nearby so that they can take off fast and go anywhere. And most of these are actually used for pleasure trips, not business trips, because business costs them, so they don't want to pay for that.
Rick, did you have your hand up for a question?
No, let me wait, because I see Sabine is going on. So go on, I'll ask it later.
Okay.
So Hanscom is the largest private jet airport in New England. And if we can be successful with this campaign, we will have a direct impact on the current flights, on private jet purchases, like you said, and production, right? So if we can sort of disincentivize, then we can help people. And there's examples for this, which I get to. We will have an impact. And I'm also thinking we need to coordinate with other people in other parts of the country that are dealing with exactly the same issue. That hasn't happened yet, and that needs to happen. Just another issue is, Massachusetts has plans to be net zero by 2050, which means we need to get down from 70, I think this is megatons, million tons, I forgot. I wanted to ask Neil and I forgot, because these are Neil's slides, but you get the math like this. We need to get down to 14, we're at 70. This isn't helping, right? Boston actually wants to get down to 0. A typical town wants to slash its output of CO2 equivalents. And Logan actually is planning to grow, and Hanscom is too. So this is where we can see that they're totally going in the wrong direction. And currently, aviation emissions are actually not counted in all our emissions calculations, because it's very difficult to see, like, are they counted at the departure or at the arrivals? And so everyone basically says, no, they're in the air. And the air is, so it's very difficult to actually pin them down. But half of all private jet travel worldwide is here in the United States. So that adds to the injustice that overall we are already the per capita, the biggest emitters, and this is the rich are the worst part. And if the growth of private jets continues as into 2022, it'll double every 7 years. So,
Wow.
They're just not getting it. And elsewhere, people are getting it. So in Amsterdam, for example, the airport itself has proposed a ban on private jets because of their disproportionate climate impacts. And these discussions are also happening in other European countries, because of course in Europe also you have very fast and nice train alternatives. But the private jets are also a major headache for the airports because, they interfere with commercial aircraft and they're smaller and whatever. It needs to get more attention, and it is starting to get more attention. If you pay attention, it's been in the news, but there needs to be a lot more attention on it. And so our opposition to this project will hopefully help us connect with other opposition in other parts of the world. Just 2 more slides. Massport is actually sending around these data, and we noticed that our electeds are getting this information. And so when you tell them, oh, this is a problem, they say, no, it's not a problem. Look, overall, flight operations are actually going down, which looks nice, but that actually isn't true for private jet travel. And we have data for private jet travel until 2021. And there, if you look under jet in the middle here, you see that the numbers are actually clearly not coming down. So private luxury jet operations continue to increase. And we will update once we have numbers for 2022. And so we have started a petition, and everyone can sign it. I have the QR code here. I will also put the actual link in the chat in a moment. So everyone can use this QR code to scan if you want, and sign the petition and support us. And I'll put it up again later and put the thing in the part. But what I'm hoping is that people will join us on this fight. And so if you go to 350 Mass Metro West, you can join us on May 18 at 7 p.m. We will have a Zoom meeting where we will talk about the campaign and how people can join and get active on this. And so I'm gonna put that link, those links in the chat so that you can sign up and you know where to go. Yeah, and I'm ready for questions, or Rick or Tom, if you want to add anything, please do so.
Well, the question that I wanted to ask Sabine was, thinking about the political fight, you mentioned the 5 surrounding towns and the social justice communities in them. I think there were more than like 25, or there was a large.
Yeah.
Okay. To what extent is the impact on those towns a critical aspect of this political fight in Massachusetts to get this to stop? Because we all know that, a polluting, whether it's a huge utility plant or an airstrip or whatever it is going on next to us is, has a local impact that far exceeds on health, that far exceeds what it does, statewide, if you're in Western Mass or depending on where the wind's blowing that day.
Right,
It
but
would
that's
strike
why
me
we're
that-
focusing on CO2 equivalents and climate, because this is a climate impact that actually affects everyone. And we are working also to ally with people in East Boston who are themselves, fighting against airport emissions and so on. So yes, this is a local fight, in that there's also, of course, the impact on the conservation areas around Hanscom, which is the only airport right next to a conservation area. And of course the whole historic area as well. But what we're really saying is, and I zoomed in on that from the beginning, this is rich people splurging on the backs of everyone else. And that is a global problem, not just a local one.
Pat, you had your hand up?
Sabine, I was just curious, though, the market forces that are driving this, are they similar to, what happens now in most of our communities across the country with gentrification, and then the houses that are affordable get, lowered, leveled, and then they build a 5,000 square foot thing right on the land. So this drive by, the people with the powerful and the wealth are driving this pretty hard, right? And it's going to be the market forces are tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course they also unfortunately have a Supreme Court now that is in their pocket, and the fear is that the few restrictions on these kinds of expansions that exist, thanks to legal permitting and other things, that they will soften those or even abolish them. And so we need to also keep an eye on that, sort of like the Citizens United equivalent for abolishing any kind of protections that we have, so that we can stop something like this. The petition, as you can see, is directed at Maura Healey, because it is ultimately Massport and therefore the governor that can put a stop to this. And so that is where we're aiming. And of course, she also has made very clear that climate is a top priority for her. And you would really think that this is low-hanging fruits in terms of climate. I mean, this should not be done.
What else can you tell us about the approval process? So, I get that she could put, or the governor could put a stop to it, but presumably any permit that's required, if that permit isn't granted, like it would seem like there are multiple opportunities to stop it. I don't want to make it sound rosy, but we're like, and also, what's the timeline?
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm not the expert on this. I've only been briefed 2 or 3 times. I'm just helping amplify the message, but What I have understood is that the process, you know, they had to submit a proposal to the Secretary of Environment, and that resulted in a major, there was a comment period, and they received the largest number of comments ever. It was like 350 comments or something. It was really, really impressive. And so the new Secretary of Environment went ahead and took that very seriously and gave the developers a long list, to-do list, basically, of studies and things that she wanted answers to. And we're expecting the response to come in either in July or August. And then there will be another comment period at some point in the early fall. Last time the comment period was only 3 weeks, so it may be a very short time where we have to then really mobilize people. And then, you know, depending on the answers to the questions, the Secretary of Environment could make more requests and so on. So that's all I can say at this point. But I can connect you with the people in Concord who are, you know, leading the charge on this, who know more about the history also.
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit. So the MEPA process, what MEPA is Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, I believe is the acronym. And so it sounds like where they are right now is they've done their initial notice to them saying, hey, we're going to do this project. And then the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs will look at that. And basically the way the regulations work, and I will say I haven't done a MEPA project, I'm retired now, so throw a caveat out there that, you know, there may have been updates since the last time I looked at this, but broadly the way the MEPA process works is that there's 2 ways you can get into the system of requiring an environmental impact report. One is just categorically, there are certain projects, and I would guess that this is one of them, although I haven't sat down and looked at it in detail, but one is a categorical inclusion that just if your project is large enough, you're in. And then there's the possibility that, you know, due to whatever the regulators feel like doing, they can pull you in. And then there is a series of reports that have to get made with public comment. And they're very broad-based, or they can be very broad-based. They look at traffic and noise and pollution and wetlands and all kinds of different things. So there's a lot that goes into them, and when that report comes out, you know, people will really need to take a hard look at it, because there will probably be a lot in it.
Yeah, and at this point, what I understood, and must confess, I'm not a lawyer, I haven't read all the small print, but what I understand is our main focus for the beginning has to be to alert people, first of all, that this is going on, because too many people have not heard of this and don't know, and also to make people understand that we can stop this, because there's a lot of people who think we can't stop this anymore. And that is just false. And so we're really trying to get the word out about it and making people understand what is at stake. And we need help with that. So we need help with people signing the petition. We need help with people coming to us and saying, I'm willing to do work to help with the campaign, to get the word out, to participate in protests and whatever else we will decide. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Pat, you had your hand up again.
Sabine, I was wondering, the leverage point of the sacrifice of this enormous amount of conservation area, forest space, doesn't the town of Concord have some right to protect its open space, and from just that, or is the federal government just too powerful? They can just come in and...
No, I think there is one part of this where the town actually does have a say. I don't think it's Concord. I think it may be Bedford. And so that is one avenue we're going. Yeah, someone.
No, it is Bedford.
Yeah, I think it's Bedford. and so that is definitely being done, but the first step there is to convince the townspeople that they can actually do this, right? And that they should.
Don't they
Yeah,
have a Martin Kessel or somebody in Bedford?
Maybe we can rent them out or something.
Yeah,
Is there any benefit to the town financially for this happening? In other words, are they going to come to the town and saying, this will mean jobs, this will mean, some revenue into your
I don't
tax base?
think
I mean,
so,
I doubt it.
because they don't have to pay taxes.
Right,
No.
right.
Well,
So-
Um,
there might be some jobs to build the hangar space, at least temporarily.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, but those could all go to an out of town,
Yeah. I
construction.
don't think
company.
anyone has tried to make that argument, because I think they know that's a BS argument, but I haven't heard that argument being made.
Speaking
I
of
think the
financial,
broader argument in the state, one can always go to the easy, well, if we don't put it here, it'll just go somewhere else, which of course, doesn't really get at any of what you were talking about already, which is convenience to your jet is everything. And,
Right.
so,
And it is precisely why we say not here, not anywhere.
right,
This
Right.
must stop. We must stop. I mean, if it were up to me, we would simply ban private jets.
yeah.
There is one unfortunate argument that has been put forward, that we could require that the jets all just be electric. And only electric jets would be allowed to fly. And of course, my counter argument is, one, it would still be a major expansion of an airport, and two, given the limited resources that we have for electrification and lithium ion batteries and so on, we should not be using them on private jets.
Right.
It's just the
Exactly.
wrong approach to this issue. So, and it would continue the other injustices in terms of taxation and so on. Erica.
speaking of financial,
Erica was trying to.
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
You are in an area where there are, I think, still League of Women Voters branches.
Yes.
I think, I know Lexington still has a league. I think Concord and Lincoln still have leagues. And
Yeah, they are in our coalition already.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they were at the meeting on Saturday.
Well, because that is, you're talking about high-priced towns
Mhm.
and people with leisure and people who have the education to value the conservation core of your
Yep.
mission.
Yep.
So they are your primary foot soldiers to get other
Yep.
people. And it's very important that each of them have a local study. I don't know how leagues work these days as compared to the time when I was president, but there are local issues that one of them be environmental in nature. And once you get consensus on the part of those local leagues, they can act as a group in the same way as we did it when we started Lake Cochituate Watershed Association. We joined with other leagues that surrounded the problem, formed an independent group.
Yep.
that
Yep.
worked
We're
on
doing
it
that.
for years.
We're doing that.
That's great.
Tom?
Yeah, this just came to me. I don't know if it'd be valid or not, but think of going to the towns as if you want the pollution smell of Logan in our area. The winds go west to east. This expansion will increase the pollution, but the smell of pollution trickles across. And towns like Needham, Waltham, all of a sudden they're going, oh my God, this smells like Logan. Might be an angle can persuade people. That's all.
Yes, and it'll also help us support those who are trying to fight Logan's expansions.
Yeah.
Sabine, has it come up to have a campaign along Route 2? Yeah, or 2A or whatever is, best cut through thing on busy weekend, busy Saturdays. We could do a sign making thing around that.
Yeah,
We
we
probably-
could do with standouts there. Yeah, great idea.
Well,
Yeah.
is there already any plan to engage those communities in the standouts with
So,
350
you
Mass and
know,
others?
As you know how activism works, there's a handful of people starting out, and now we're trying to get as many people as possible, right? Because we can only be in one place at once. So if we can get more people to help us, then yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I'm on this working group for events and outreach, and this is something we should consider. Can we do weekly standouts near Route 2 somewhere where there's a lot of traffic with clear messaging that people need to sign the petition and voice their opposition to this? Yes, I love it. I like it.
And what other groups, to Ricky's point or earlier, what other groups besides 350 Mass, 350 Metro West, and all of the chapters are currently have this high on the radar to?
So we have work. So far, like for example, Third Act, which has, by the way, a launch event, and you might all be interested in that this week. Third Act is involved because Bill McKibben was actually the one that alerted me to it, and many of us when he was here recently. And he's of course from Lexington, so he knows the area well. And he was like, "This is a no-brainer. Like this needs to be stopped." Like he was very clear. And Mothers Out Front and the League of Women Voters from all the towns and Concord Can. I mean, we're trying to get the young people involved. So if you know any young people organizations, climate organizations, please let them know. Please share the petition with them. At this point, we're really just trying to grow as a coalition. And so if you're part of any organization, send them the petition. Whether it's your course or your sport club or whatever it is, like anyone needs to know about this. And if you want to get involved, you can email me. I'm putting my email here in the chat, and I will get you to the right people so that you can get more information. Lots of hands up.
Yeah, Pat, and then Tom again, and then Sarah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Sabine, was there anything in the Inflation Reduction Act that would just incentivize jetports and private luxury jets, or was it pretty much ignored?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. But I would be very surprised if it would incentivize it, right? But whether there was any disincentive, I don't think that's how I think it's all on the positive side. They want to subsidize the good, but yeah, but I don't know.
Mhm.
That's something we need to do research on for sure.
Tom had lowered his hand, so Sarah?
Yeah, it may be too early to really know this, but in terms of, getting effective messages out and so forth, is this project far enough along that the proponents have put together some kind of, I'll call it marketing, but some kind of, here's why this is a great idea, let's go do this? I mean, something that we could look at specifically and say, no, actually, that's not true. And this actually isn't, just that we can directly counter what they're saying. Are they there yet? Or is this still too new?
I think my suspicion is, if I could guess, then they're doing what we're doing right now. They're probably gathering their PR people. They're probably spending money on this to try to counter whatever it is that we will mount.
Mm-hmm.
But until now, they've hoped to fly under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were probably taken by surprise when so much active opposition became noticeable in the comment period. Because although they shouldn't be surprised, because the Hanscom people have, I mean, the protesters against Hanscom have been successful in the past. They have prevented commercial jet expansion at Hanscom. They have prevented FedEx making it their place of, hub.
Very helpful.
And so they have been quite good in the past of protesting expansions. And so the people who are doing this should be aware, but I haven't seen any big marketing push on their end yet.
Okay.
Before we go to Carrie, I wanted to ask a question on behalf of Cindy, who couldn't be here. She was, I think, questioning whether somehow this hangar expansion could reduce the Massport deficit, and whether this would somehow, be, whether that would be an argument that might make it difficult for the state to turn down, or whether if we were successful in keeping this hangar expansion from happening, well, how would we handle the deficit?
I mean, the only way that could work is if they actually were taxed, right? They
Yeah, so-
currently have to pay sort of 0.2% or something on fuel or something like that. That's it. They
Yeah,
don't pay taxes.
yeah. So our understanding of it is that this isn't going to help the deficit anyway. So it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No,
Carrie.
and that could be like one way for them to try to compromise, but since this is a national phenomenon, they will not want to try that, right? They will want to push through as is.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I was at that Bill McKibben event in Concord a few weeks back, and that was my first introduction to the Hanscom field. You mentioned that, I think this week you said there was something that Third Act was doing. I was at the website and saw next Monday night, there was a few things.
On the 15th, sorry, yes, it's next Monday.
Okay,
Yes.
next Monday. Okay,
Sorry.
no worries.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, it's a terrific presentation. I don't know who all was
Yeah.
there. No, Carol was there, but yeah, he's a gene.
Does everybody know what Third Act is? If not, Sabina could explain it.
Do people not know what it is?
Like people like us over 60.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of this crowd knows. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Pat,
Yes.
again.
Yeah, I was just questioning, maybe Ricky or Paul can ask or answer too. Would the Bedford Select Board have any right to stand up and say, hey, we don't want this for our town, or do they have any influence and power?
I would say they should. Everyone should. That's why we're doing the petition. We're working on, in the past, the local elected officials have all been in support of protesting expansions, but there hasn't been, the hand holding hasn't happened in recent years. So there's an effort now to make sure people are aware and take a position.
Nice.
But there's some level of defeatism involved, so that needs to be countered, that people feel, oh no, we can't stop this.
Uh-huh.
Of course we can.
Ricky, you had your hand up again? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm late to this party, and so the actual definition, who is the applicant to do this? Who is the proponent? Could you define who that is?
Yeah, it's an LLC that sort of Massport sort of handed this over to an organization that's formed itself for this purpose. And I'm trying to find the name. I have the name somewhere. I don't know why it wasn't in the. It's Runway Realty Ventures LLC and North Airfield Ventures LLC.
And they're a private corporation that's trying to do this.
Yes. So Massport has kind of handed it over to them, I
But
guess.
they've been formed specifically for this purpose, right?
Yes, exactly.
Understood you. Yeah.
Mhm. Which is why we're going straight to the governor.
Yeah,
There's no in between agency.
no, I think the governor's the right place, but I think Ed Markey is a national spokesperson for the environment, and he's our senator.
Yep.
I would think that we would have to go to him first And Elizabeth Warren is up for re-election.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
But
But we
Mark,
need to have, yeah, but we need to have all our ducks in a row. And so the petition needs more signatures so that we can also show how vehement the public resistance is to this. So the more we can get there, the better. But I agree with you. I agree with you. And
I hear what you're saying for popular support and all of that, but I think he needs to be hooked in as as the main organizer of your protest because of his role on the national scene with respect to the environment. I mean, it can't be more local for him. And if he can't defend his own state on his main issue, I think there's a problem there.
Have we reached out to the media at all, the Globe or news stations or so?
yeah, we're working on that. We have a whole, we're working with the letters to the editor team of 350 Mass. We also formed on Saturday a working group on research and communications. And so there's going to be, the messaging needs to be fine-tuned before we do a blast, but that's all in the works at present.
Okay. Pat, again?
Yes, and isn't the congressional delegation in Massachusetts plus Senators Pilka, Catherine Clark, people like that are pretty powerful people, right? So
yeah,
they could get.
But who is the state senator from that district?
Senator Barrett.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah, he was the one who proposed the electric flights.
I didn't realize that technology existed yet anyway. I
It's
agree with
very
you that
minimal.
it's ridiculous to use it for that, but
They have a massive.
Well,
battery.
and I assume that was partly his thinking, that because it doesn't exist, then it would sort of kill it, maybe. I don't know. He wrote a public letter in support of not expanding the jets as is, but suggested then that they could be electric only. There have been a few flights, all electric flights. They're tiny and they're short, and it's not yet viable really as an alternative. And again, as I said, is that how we want to use the precious rare metals so that more wealthy people can fly privately? That's just not a sensible way to use resources that are limited.
yeah.
Well, let me push back on that for a second. Simply because one of the things, and maybe I'm wrong about this, one of the things I've read recently is that, we're going to be looking at, air traffic flying the same way it's flying now, but only with, more frequency in another 30 years and beyond because of the fueling, problem of getting, of long distance airfare. And it might not be a bad idea to have some model of electrification. So while I originally thought he was simply taking the easy way out when you said that and proposing an undoable idea like you, I'd be curious, not now, to hear further discussion on what people think about that, because their alternative fuels could be a long way away for that and for these big ships. And one of the things I'm going to do is follow up with a young wealthy guy that I know who I rented something from, who happened to be working for several years as soon as the pandemic started in the private jet industry. And I'm going to ask him and see if he has any, any thoughts about how they go about expanding that and where they are on that. He's no longer in that. He's now in an equally disgusting line of work, doing mega yachts for super rich. So, he's a nice enough guy, but, it's just unbelievable. But I did send him the articles about this. and, you know, to poke him a little bit on this. I'm going to follow up with him now and see if he can share anything from his previous, you know, dirty
Rick,
job.
I spoke with a private jet pilot
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, actually, when I was still in Europe, and she said to me, I don't understand why people get angry at private jets. We have our emissions are so much smaller than the commercial jets.
And how many people are riding on them?
So that's about how much math a pilot needs to have, I guess.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're thinking of electrifying, you know, yes, of course we need to electrify everything. But if you follow the lithium battery discussion and how far we are from actually producing enough lithium for the electric cars that are supposedly all going to be built starting 2035, right? European Union has banned new registration for gas-powered cars in 2035. And there is no way the extraction of lithium can keep up with that pace as it is. And so, and the extraction of lithium is a huge environmental hazard. I mean, if you've seen these pools of lithium that are being constructed in, and of course, who is working there, under what conditions? It's all in areas of very, very poor labor, you know, laws and so on. So the idea that we can somehow green ourselves out of this by electrifying private jets is absurd.
So a possible topic for a future Coffee with a Purpose may be there's 2 or 3 folks in Maine who have been buying up land over what they believe is a very significant lithium deposit. They own about 5,000 acres now.
Smart.
And they have submitted a proposal to the state of Maine to do some mining. And of course, Maine, like every single place in America and probably all over the world where mining has happened, mining is devastating to the environment. And the state of Maine has enacted a pretty strict mining regulation. And they're I think 3 acres is what these people can do. So there's this interesting environmental fight brewing in Maine of, on the one hand, hey, lithium is needed to green the grid, but mining can be really bad. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Just to that point, I don't know if anyone saw 60 Minutes last night, but they had a whole story about a site in Southern California sitting on a geothermal location that's just rich with uranium that would, lithium that would be supply all that we need for the foreseeable future. And they're trying to make it net positive by saying that all the energy that's needed to produce this would come up from the geothermal heat that would transfer it into steam to generate power for things. It was an interesting story, and at least Southern California is not coming from Argentina and some of these other far off places. So
Really, yeah. No, and I mean, you're right. Of course, we need to also, I mean, this has nothing to do with private jets, but we need to also figure out how we can reduce consumption, right? So that we don't actually need to mine further, and that's especially on us. I mean, I keep talking about the super rich, but compared to the whole world, every one of us is part of the problem. So we all need to be part of that conversation.
I need to applaud that story as a way to allow these people to get more electric private jets. It would help to power the EV.
Right. I agree. And of course we need it. I mean, I drive an electric vehicle. I have solar panels on my roof. I do, participate in this, of course. It's definitely better than fossil fuels, no question.
Yeah. Tom, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, I read I think it was 2 to 4 weeks ago about an article that there are people out there to try to figure out something other than lithium that is environmentally okay. And So there are people out there, companies out there looking at using something other than lithium
Mhm.
and it would be environmentally okay. So
Yeah.
Right,
I was encouraged to read. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I was at least encouraged.
yeah, and there was a really good program on NPR a couple of weeks ago about EVs, and they said that cobalt, for example, which is another mineral that is mined under very suspect conditions, that there is now research into reducing the need of cobalt in batteries and EVs. And so I think what I would say as a university professor is the money needs to go into R&D. Like, we need a lot more money expended on alternatives, on reducing the need for energy and so on, instead of, you know, trying to keep everything the way it is and just make it green. We need to be much more creative, and we're still spending more money on fossil fuel research, right? That's also important to remember.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, Sabine. I know you have a 10:15 meeting that you're starting to bump right up against, and so you need to leave us in a couple of minutes. But thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. And I guess our first action is to go sign the petition in the chat, which I'll distribute. There's links to all kinds of other information. What's besides signing the petition, what's the next best thing we can do?
Well, I also put the link in the chat for the Metro West Node on May 18 as a Zoom call at 7, where we will literally divide up the work and get people signed up to do things. So if you're willing to help, we need help for anything and everything in this campaign. So
I'll just tell you right now, we're going to be out of state in a place with no cell coverage, so we won't be able to join. But at the point that the reports come out through MEPA, you know, I'd be happy to look at them from, you know, my expertise is in groundwater and hazardous waste. So I'm sure that jet fuel operations and all that, I'd be happy to take a look at that piece of it.
nice, thank you.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
All
Well,
right,
thank you. I'm going to turn the recording off. We can continue to chat for a bit if people like, but I know that Sabine needs to leave. So
thanks for having me.
yeah.
Thanks for
You're welcome.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for